What if the moment a girl's life is destroyed is the same moment her destiny begins? The dust hung thick in the air of the Silver Dollar Saloon, mixing with tobacco smoke and the sour stench of whiskey. Wyoming Territory, 1878. A place where men settled disputes with bullets and women were rarer than honest cards. The afternoon sun blazed through grimy windows, casting long shadows across the scarred wooden floor where Clara Mayfield stood, her hands trembling despite the suffocating heat. Her father, Samuel Mayfield, slurred from the poker table, his bloodshot eyes refusing to meet hers. "Gentlemen," he declared loudly, wobbling in his chair, "I'm putting up something more valuable than gold." Clara felt her stomach twist. She had seen that desperate gleam in his eyes before, when he sold their last horse, when he pawned her mother's wedding ring, but this time was different. This time his gaze flicked toward her. "Pa, no," she whispered, but the word carried across the room like a gunshot. "Quiet, girl," Samuel snapped. "Men are conducting business." Quote. The players leaned forward with interest. Jake Morrison, a cattle buyer known for his wandering hands, grinned wide enough to show every rotten tooth he had left. "What exactly are you offering, Mayfield?" "My daughter," Samuel said. 18 years old, untouched, knows her place, can cook and clean. Worth more than the 500 I owe." The saloon erupted. Chairs scraped. Men whistled. Eyes crawled over her like spiders across skin. Clara's cheeks burned with humiliation. Her simple calico dress suddenly felt like a target instead of clothing. She pressed a trembling hand over the scar on her cheek, a reminder of the night her father threw a bottle in one of his rages. "Untouched?" Morrison asked, licking his lips. "How can we be sure?" Quote. Clara wanted to run. But where? Her mother was gone. She had no home, no money, no friends, only a father who loved whiskey more than blood. "You have my word," Samuel said. "Your word ain't worth dust," another man snorted. "But I'll take the bet." 600, Morrison yelled. 7, 8, quote. Clara's nails dug into her palms until she felt blood. She was being sold again. Sold like a mule, sold like nothing. Through the shouting, one man didn't move. Silas Thornton. He sat at the end of the table, tall and still as stone, broad shoulders filling his dark coat. His gray eyes, cold as storm clouds, never drifted below Clara's chin. He didn't stare like the others. He didn't smirk. He simply watched her, and in those eyes, she saw something she never expected. Sadness, recognition, maybe even pity. "Enough," Silas said quietly. 1,000. The room fell silent. Even the bartender froze. Morrison choked. 1,000? For her? Silas's gaze stayed locked on Clara. "If that's too much, then you won't mind when I claim the bet." Samuel hesitated. Too late. He had thrown his daughter on the table like a playing card and couldn't take it back. The final cards were dealt. Samuel was sweating. Morrison's grin grew wider. And Silas, calm as a winter lake, studied his hand. Morrison revealed 3 queens. Samuel had 2 pairs. Not enough. Silas laid down a straight flush. Samuel slammed the table. "You cheated!" Silas rose slowly, towering over him. "Careful, Mayfield. You questioning my honor?" Samuel shrank back. Even drunk, he wasn't stupid enough to push Silas Thornton. Then the words came, cold and final. "She's mine now." The breath left Clara's lungs. Property, sold, owned. She wanted to scream, wanted to break. But the saloon watched her like a pack of wolves. Silas approached her. But instead of grabbing her, he removed his hat, a gesture meant for ladies, not gambling stakes. "Miss Mayfield," he said in a low voice meant only for her. "Come with me. Don't fight. Not here." "And if I refuse," she whispered, "then things get dangerous, and you know these men would enjoy that." Her heart hammered. She looked at her father, head down, drunk, ashamed. Morrison glared at her like a prize stolen from his hands. The crowd leaned forward, hungry for drama. She lifted her chin. "I need to gather my things." "You have 5 minutes," Silas said. He turned to the room. "Anyone follows us, Anyone thinks to interfere will answer to me." Quote. No one doubted him. Clara climbed the stairs to the small rented room. Her belongings fit into a single carpet bag: 2 dresses, a worn Bible, a small photograph of her parents before life broke them, and her mother's silver hairbrush. She stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror, dusty, scared, alone, and now claimed by a stranger. A knock came. "Time's up, Miss Mayfield." She opened the door to Silas, standing there, hat in hand again. "I'm not what you think," she whispered. He met her eyes. "You're a young woman dealt a bad hand by a cruel world. Nothing more, nothing less." He led her down through the silent saloon. Men stepped aside, watching greedily, disappointed she was leaving with Silas instead of them. Outside, the sun hit her like fire. His horse, a massive black stallion, waited. Silas lifted her up gently, careful not to startle her, then mounted behind her. "Where are we going?" she asked in a shaking voice. "Thornton Ranch," he said. "A day's ride." "And then?" she whispered. Silas was quiet a long time. "Then we see what happens next, one thing at a time." Clara stared at the fading town behind them. She was alone, she was sold, she was claimed. But for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her without hunger in their eyes, and that terrified her more than anything. What if the man who claimed her wasn't her captor, but the only person in the West willing to stand between her and hell? The trail stretched endlessly before them, a dusty ribbon cutting through sagebrush and red rock. Clara sat stiff in the saddle, refusing to lean back against Silas's solid chest even as the hours dragged on. She didn't want comfort, and she didn't want to need it. For a long time neither spoke. Then Silas said, "There's a creek ahead. We'll stop there." She didn't answer. She didn't trust her voice not to shake. When they reached the creek, Silas dismounted first, then held out a hand to help her down. Clara hesitated before taking it. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet touched the ground, but she steadied herself quickly, refusing to show weakness. "Drink," he said, handing her the canteen. She ignored him and knelt at the creek, cupping water in her hands. When she lifted her head, she saw him watching her, not like Morrison had, not like the men in the saloon, but with a strange, unreadable calm. "What?" she demanded. "Just making sure you're all right." "I'm fine." "You're shaken." "Wouldn't you be?" she snapped. "Being sold, watched, judged, touched with eyes like I was something to buy?" Silas didn't flinch. "You weren't bought for that." Her throat tightened. "Then why?" Silas looked away for a moment, gathering words. "Because letting those men take you would have been the same as killing you." Clara froze. Silas added quietly, "And I've lost enough people in my life." His voice carried something deep, something wounded. They ate by the water in silence. Clara forced the dry jerky down her throat. Silas kept a respectful distance. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry, didn't push. But when storm clouds rose on the horizon, he moved toward her. "We need to ride. That's trouble." Soon the wind roared around them, lifting dust in sharp spirals. The sky turned an angry red as the storm swallowed the landscape. The horse snorted and danced, and Clara instinctively leaned back, bracing herself against Silas as the wind punched into them. "Hold on," he said, wrapping an arm around her waist. "This is a bad one." The storm hit full force, dust, sand, and wind so fierce it felt like needles. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Clara gripped the saddle horn. Fear rose in her chest. Silas held her steady. "See that rock ridge? There's shelter under it." She didn't see anything, just chaos. But Silas guided them through the storm with steady confidence until they reached a shallow cave carved into the rock. He pulled her inside, leading the trembling horse behind them. Silas took off his duster coat and lifted it like a shield, blocking the storm from hitting her. "Get back from the wind," he told her firmly. Clara pressed herself against the stone wall. Sand still swirled into the cave, but Silas took the worst of it, standing in front of her like a barrier of muscle and determination. "You're going to get hurt," she said. "I've had worse." "Why are you doing this?" she blurted. Silas looked at her, dust clinging to his lashes, wind whipping his hair. His eyes were storms of their own. "Because you deserve protection," he said, "not pain." No one had ever said such a thing to her. Not once in her life. She swallowed hard. "You don't even know me. Maybe I don't need to." He said it so simply that it broke something inside her. For a long moment, the storm was their whole world. Wind screaming, dust spinning, the horse stamping nervously. Silas never moved, never lowered his coat, never let the storm touch her. When the wind finally began to settle, he turned back to her. "You cold?" "No," Clara whispered. "Just tired." Silas nodded. "We'll move when the air clears." She stared down at her hands. "You bought me today." His jaw tensed. "I freed you today. You claim me. I protect you. You own me." "No, Clara." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I saved you." "There's a difference." Her breath caught. Silas continued. "You'll work at the ranch, earn your keep, pay back the $1,000 someday if you want, or leave when you're ready." Clara blinked hard. "Leave? You'd let me?" "You're not mine to keep." The words struck her harder than any slap, not because they offended her, but because they felt like truth she didn't know how to handle. The storm faded. They mounted again, and this time, when Silas reached for her, Clara didn't pull away. She let him steady her, let him hold her as they rode into the cooling evening. Night fell by the time they reached a distant ridge overlooking a wide valley. Far out in the darkness, tiny lanterns glowed like stars on earth. Silas pointed. "Thornton Ranch." Clara stared. It looked like a town, a small, glowing world away from all the ugliness she had known. Her throat tightened. "That's yours?" "Ours now," Silas said simply. Something warm and terrifying flickered inside her chest. When they reached the ranch house, an older Mexican woman stepped out onto the porch. She had sharp eyes, a strong stance, and an expression that made Clara straighten instantly. "Patron," she said to Silas, "you return early." "Rosa," Silas said, "this is Clara Mayfield. She'll be staying here." Rosa lifted an eyebrow. "I see." Silas ignored her tone. "Give her the blue room." Rosa nodded and motioned Clara inside. As Clara followed, she heard Rosa mutter, "You brought trouble, Silas Thornton." And Silas answered softly, "No. I brought someone who needed a place." Clara didn't know why, but her eyes stung. Inside the small, warm room Rosa prepared for her, Clara stared at the simple bed, the wash basin, the little window that looked out over the dark fields. This wasn't a cage. It wasn't a prison. It was safety. The first she had ever known. As she sat on the edge of the bed, exhaustion pulling at her, a knock sounded at her door. Silas. He didn't enter. Just stood there, hat in hand. "Miss Mayfield," he said, "you're safe here. Sleep. Tomorrow we talk." She swallowed. "Silas." "Thank you." He nodded once, sharply. "Get some rest." When he walked away, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know what she was walking into. But for the first time since her mother died, she wasn't facing the world alone. And that changed everything. What if the man she feared losing was the only one who had ever truly chosen her? Clara woke before dawn to the ranch coming alive outside her window. Roosters crowing, horses calling for morning feed, men shouting to each other. For a long moment she lay still, trying to understand the strange feeling in her chest. Safety. A feeling she had never known. Rosa knocked once, then stepped inside without waiting for an answer. "Up," she said. "Work does not wait for heartbreaks or new beginnings." Clara washed quickly, dressed, and followed Rosa to the kitchen. The older woman didn't smile, but she didn't glare either. Her eyes lingered on Clara's face, searching. "You slept," Rosa stated. "Yes." "You needed it." Clara hesitated. "You don't approve of me." "I don't know you yet," Rosa corrected, "but I know Silas. He brings home strays, animals, men, sometimes trouble. You? I have not decided. Clara swallowed. I'm not trouble. We shall see. They worked side by side in silence, cooking eggs, frying bacon, cutting bread. Mornings on the ranch were fast and busy, and Clara found herself moving with Rosa's rhythm. When the ranch hands filed in, their voices loud and teasing, Clara held her breath. Every head turned toward her. "This her?" a young cowboy asked, grinning. "The girl the boss paid $1,000 for?" "Tom," warned Bill, the foreman, a tall man with gray in his beard. "Shut your mouth." Tom smirked. "Just asking." Clara set the plates down with a steady hand. Let them whisper, let them stare. She wasn't scared of men like Tom anymore. Silas entered then, and the room went silent. His presence was like that, strong, steady, commanding. He gave Clara a brief look, one that sent heat rising in her face despite herself. "Miss Mayfield will be working here from now on," Silas said. "You treat her with respect." "Yes, boss," the men said in unison. Silas sat, and the table filled with conversation again. Safe conversation this time. Nothing crude, nothing pointed. Clara wasn't invisible anymore. She was protected. When breakfast was over, she stepped outside to shake crumbs from the tablecloth and found Silas waiting on the porch. "You doing all right?" he asked. She nodded. "You'll need time to settle. No one expects miracles." "You saved me," Clara said softly. Silas shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to land." "No," she said, steps closer without thinking. "Silas, if you hadn't been there, if you hadn't spoken up, I don't know what would have happened." "You would have found a way," he said quietly. "Spirit like yours doesn't die easy." Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "Silas, why did you really buy me?" He looked out toward the fields for a long moment before answering. "Because you reminded me of someone," he said. "Someone I couldn't save." "Your fiancée," Clara whispered, remembering Rosa's hint. "Catherine," Silas confirmed, voice low. "She died of fever 5 years ago. I had money, land, everything a man should have, and none of it could save her." Quote. He met Clara's eyes then, his gaze full of old wounds. "When I saw you in that saloon, standing there like your fate was already decided, I couldn't let it happen again, not to someone who still had a whole life ahead." Clara's heart tugged. "Silas, I'm not her." "No," he said, "you're not. You're stronger." Her breath caught. But before either of them could say anything else, a shout rang from the corral. "Boss, you need to see this." They hurried over. One of the horses, a stubborn roan stallion, was thrashing in the pen, eyes wild. Tom, who had been trying to break it, was on the ground, clutching his arm and cursing. "Idiot boy," Bill muttered, told him not to push the stallion yet. "I can calm him," Silas said. "You'll get yourself killed." Tom snapped bitterly. Silas ignored him. He stepped into the corral slowly, hands low, voice steady. Clara watched in awe as he approached the angry animal, whispering softly, moving with patience and confidence. It took time. Long, tense minutes, but eventually the stallion's ears lowered, his breathing slowed, and he allowed Silas to stroke his neck. "That's how you handle a creature with fear in its blood," Bill said quietly to Tom. "Patience, respect, strength. Try learning something." Clara felt the words hit her deep. When Silas exited the corral, he caught Clara watching him. She didn't look away. Neither did he. That night, Clara sat near the fireplace after supper, mending shirts Rosa had given her. The ranch was quiet now. The men settled in their bunks. The lamps turned low. Silas stepped into the room. "You should rest," he said. "I'm fine." He hesitated, then walked to the mantel. "I'd like to talk if you're willing." Clara set the shirt down. "About what?" Silas took a slow breath. "About us, and about choices." Her heart hammered. He sat across from her, not too close, not too far. "When I brought you here," he said softly, "I meant what I said. You're not trapped. You have options." "Like what?" she whispered. "Stay and work, save money, build a life here." Or, he swallowed, "When you're ready, I'll give you enough to leave with safety and dignity." Clara froze. Leave? She thought of the ranch hands, of Rosa, of the horses in the pasture, of Silas's steady gray eyes. And her heart hurt. "You want me to leave?" she asked quietly. "No," he said instantly. "God, Clara, no. But you deserve freedom. You deserve a real chance to choose what you want." She stood slowly, her hands shaking. "And what if what I want is here?" Silas's breath caught, his control slipping for one raw second. "Clara," he said, voice thick, "don't choose out of gratitude." "I'm not." He rose too, standing so close the air between them tightened. "Don't choose because I saved you." "I'm not." "Don't choose because you're afraid of the world out there." "I'm not." Clara lifted her chin. "I choose because this place feels like home. Because when you look at me, Silas, I don't feel like something broken. I feel like someone who matters." Silas closed his eyes for a moment, fighting something inside him. When he opened them, the storm in his gaze was gone, replaced by something warmer, stronger, something she felt down to her bones. "Clara," he said softly, "if you choose me, then I'll choose you just as fiercely, but only when you're ready." "I'm ready now," she whispered. Silas shook his head gently. "Not out of fear, not out of running from the past. When you choose me, I want it to be from strength." "Then hear me clearly," Clara said, stepping into him, placing her hand against his chest, where his heartbeat thudded hard. "I survived my father. I survived the saloon. I survived being sold. And I'm still standing. That's strength, Silas. And I'm choosing you." Silas grabbed her hand, holding it tight. His voice was rough. "Then I'll spend every day earning that choice." Clara felt her throat tighten as he lifted her hand slowly, carefully, and pressed his lips to her knuckles. The touch was warm, gentle, fierce in its tenderness. Her heart burned. When he lifted his head, their eyes stayed locked. This wasn't the claim the men in the saloon had imagined. This was something deeper, stronger, free. Outside, the wind quieted, and the lanterns on the porch flickered calm and steady. Clara Mayfield was no longer sold, no longer claimed like property. She was choosing her future, and Silas Thornton was choosing her right back.